True living Africa. True living Africa.
Welcome back, guys. Thank you for joining us again on True Living Africa. So today we are talking about meditation while living a stressful lifestyle. And we have a guest with us today, Fola Pinhero. Hi, Fola. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Hi, Fola. Than's for joining us today. So Fola is a lawyer who writes about meditation and mindfulness. You can find his written pieces on his weekly newsletter, Being Present. He also takes an interest in psychology and philosophy. We're so stoked to speak with Fola today, and especially on a topic that's it's such a cure-all these days. Yeah. Meditation it's been around. It's been around for centuries, but of recent, it's really come to the fore. And that's really because people have sort of found ways to do this thing. It's not as rigid as we thought it used to be, and it's so ubiquitous now. It helps with all manner of ailments, so to speak.
Yeah. And it's interesting that it's coming into the mainstream, into
That's
even
the
business.
Word I was looking for. Yes,
business,
mainstream.
Yeah, into even the business environment. Remember how we met Fola at Social Media Week?
Exactly.
And also, tech companies are understanding that meditation, finding balance, especially in this world that is going so virtual, finding balance is very, very, very important. What has your journey been like, Fola? What got you into meditation? Because you're a lawyer, so I mean, we understand why you need meditation. But how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I'd like to say just thank you for having me on again. So, yeah, I got into it, it was about 3 years ago now. So I think probably 3 years in May. So yeah, I got into it because I really just started exploring, how can I conquer anxiety and insecurities that I have? And it was really something that I think I just stumbled upon it randomly. I saw a YouTube video that was pretty much a 20-minute guided meditation, and I thought, let me just try that out. And I think I fell asleep halfway through or something. Oh, wow. But then it was only until I went back and got an app that I then actually started to, make it more of a habit. And, it's just been in my life ever since then. And I think probably one of the most important things that I do for just managing day to day and, dealing with challenges. So, yeah.
You mentioned that you did a guided meditation video on YouTube. What's the difference between guided meditation and just regular meditation? Is there a difference?
Not much, I think, at the level of your actual experience. So I think it's generally helpful to have a guide early on than to sort of go unguided and just do it by yourself. Mainly because you tend to get distracted, right? Yeah. And it's always helpful to have someone's voice that can always bring you back to the meditation.
Right.
So I think there isn't much of a difference with using one on YouTube or using an app or whatever. I think early on the key thing is to have something that guides you and then sort of maybe ease that as you go along. But yeah.
I think so. For guided meditation, right? Just to follow up with what Fola is saying is, especially when you're a beginner meditator or you're new to it, and I found out that it's so easy to get distracted because being distracted is our constant state of mind, isn't it, Fola? Right. Yeah. So and anxiety really comes from when we fixate on either the past or we are fixated on the future. Isn't it?
But not the present.
Right. And so what meditation then does is sort of helps us stay in the present. And that's when you're intentionally focused on the here and now. And that's why, it then helps with anxiety because it quiets your overactive brain, because here and now is just empty. And then you begin to appreciate like where exactly you are. You appreciate sort of everything is sort of in your present, it's amplified, right? And so it helps to quiet your brain. There are people who don't know what a quiet mind feels like. I've met people who say, I don't understand what a quiet mind feels like. How do you get your mind to be quiet? Especially people who've grown up in polygamous homes or large families where they're really in each other's spaces. I've met a few people like that who say, I've never been on my own. I've never been by myself. So the noise is both external and internal, and I don't know what a quiet mind sounds like. So the guided part really helps when you're beginning to keep you focused on that here and now and that voice, and it leads you and helps you with what you need to sort of imagine and stuff like that.
I guess I'm one of those people who, when I did first started with meditation, I would get distracted, and I just thought, what's this? Until I encountered an app, 1 minute meditation, and it just, it wasn't necessarily a guided meditation per se. It was just like an alarm that would, for 1 minute, be still.
Like your 1 minute of calm.
Yeah. And you're just waiting for that alarm to go off at the end of the 1 minute. I think my first experience with a guided meditation was at Social Media Week. And we went through a session and all, but apart from that, I don't think I've actually... So what you're saying, that a voice is guiding you, someone is acting as a guide.
Right.
I didn't experience that before.
Right. And
I think it's...
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, go on. Okay, I was going to say, I think it's actually important when you're getting into meditation to recognize that you don't have to start off, say, meditating 20 minutes at a stretch or 1 hour at a stretch. 1 minute is actually enough for you to just see that your mind is just going crazy most of the time.
Right. And it's crazy how noisy the mind is, like you said. Crazy.
Yeah. I think so. I went on a meditation retreat. I think I mentioned this at Social Media Week. And so that was October last year. And
what's a meditation retreat?
What is it?
Yeah.
Tell us what that experience was like.
Yeah, so basically it's where you go to, generally speaking, it tends to be with an organization.
Okay.
You have like a professional teacher, someone who's an experienced meditator. I went with, I think there were maybe 50 other people on the retreat.
Oh, wow.
You sort of go to an isolated area and it's like you stay in like a hostel and you just meditate all the time. There's no phones, no internet connection, pretty much just you meditating for maybe, 8 to 10 hours a day.
That's amazing.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you here. You know the picture that came to my mind? Everybody sitting together, cross legs with their fingers touching and singing Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya.
I thought it would be like that as well. I remember like when I first got there, I thought, what am I doing here? Why am I doing here?
But what kind of people were there? Were they like professionals or hippies? Because it's hippies that is coming to my mind.
I thought to be like that, but most people there were really chilled. Like most people that were, young, working, wanted to just get a break.
Young urban
life.
Professionals.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was very, I think everyone had the perception that everyone else was going to be like that. And then, there were a few people who were a bit
out there.
Questionable. But then I thought, generally speaking, most people were fine.
Okay.
And very friendly as well. And I think, so the reason I brought it up is one day when I was meditating on the retreat, a thought just randomly occurred to me, and I just realized my mind is actually crazy. It's always just, it decides, what am I having for lunch, or what am I doing later today, or what happened yesterday, or they shouldn't have said this or that.
Right.
And if you're not aware of that process going on, you're constantly just pulled around by whatever thoughts just appears in your mind.
Interesting.
And I think that sort of even brings us to the topic of stress and meditation as well.
Yeah.
Because, if you just let your mind run amok, it can make you completely freak out about, let's say you have a deadline at work or something. Oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end, and I'm such a terrible person, this and that. And it actually detracts from what it is you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
I.e., it detracts from the present moment there and then. And it's sort of making up stories about the future, the past, and it like you said earlier, it just detracts from being here now.
And it's interesting because there's a popular saying that fear is an acronym for false evidence appearing real. And it's interesting that you say, you start to have imaginations about what the future holds and stuff like that, and you start to beat yourself up. And you don't have, when we don't have that awareness, a lot of people don't even understand that stress is coming from their thoughts, really.
Yeah. And they can manage that.
Exactly. And that's a part that they can actually manage. A lot of negative emotions come from how we think and whether, and not being able to control our thoughts. When environmental triggers happen and something comes up, and I say trigger because it could be a trigger that's as far back as your child, like a childhood trigger or a past relationship trigger or a workplace trigger. Something just triggers a thought, and then the thought triggers an emotion, and then your whole body shuts down. And then the stress, you're just overwhelmed with stress and anxiety. And if you don't have the awareness, you can't really piece apart or put together where the stress is coming from. You just feel, I have high blood pressure. You just find yourself in these weird situations. But with meditation, like you said, the beautiful thing about meditation, which you also talked about, is the fact that you have these breakthroughs. You have these emotional and mental breakthroughs. Like you mentioned, it just occurred to you that your thoughts, right, were going crazy, like your mind was crazy, and that was during one of the quiet times. And that's one of the wonderful things, isn't it, about meditation, where you actually have breakthroughs on either a problem that you're trying to solve, or like what I like to call it, the universe speaking to you and giving you solutions and guiding you. And some people call it the Holy Spirit. Some people call it your chakra. Some people, people call it different names. But I like to say that the universe, you actually give space for the universe to speak when you get quiet.
My pastor says there are many voices in the garden. So when you go quiet, it helps you to filter out the true voices so that you can hear the true voice.
Right.
You filter out the false voices so that you can hear the true voice. And it's interesting. So all this talk about guided meditation, are you going to take us through a session?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yes, for sure. At the end of our session today, he's going to take us through.
So that's something to look forward to, guys.
Absolutely. And there's something I wanted to also ask you. In terms of meditating, I would say maybe like graduating through the process of meditation, right? When you're a beginner meditator, are there graduated stages? Do you get to this master meditator stage where you don't need a guide? And what does that look like? In all the work and the research you've done.
Yes, I don't know how qualified I am to speak of this, because I'm definitely far from being enlightened or
right, reaching the point of enlightenment.
Enlightened master.
Yeah, but from what I've read, it's actually whether or not you can actually make progress in meditation is actually quite controversial. There's one school of thought that tends to think, yes, you can progress, and you sort of start by, say, focusing on your breath and noting that you know your thoughts.
Right.
And in that process, you sort of dissociate from your thoughts. Then there's the next stage, which is then focus on your body and realize that at your very essence, you're not in your body.
Right.
And then you do that for everything you're aware of. And then you then realize that what you really are is this open, empty space that's always present.
Right.
Interesting.
But then, so that's like on one side of things. But then another side of things, people tend to think or argue that that open, empty presence that you're going to get to through a process, you can already get to that right now.
Right.
By sort of asking contemplative questions like, what is aware of what's going on? Or who am I without thinking?
Exactly.
Or
Interesting.
Yes.
what am I without referring to a thought?
Right.
And in that school of thoughts, which I recently have tended to gravitate towards, there isn't a path, there isn't a process, there isn't progress to be made. You're already there.
You're already there.
And it's about and there being the open, empty space of awareness, and then once you recognize that, you can then include everything in that space.
Interesting.
So it's sort of a reverse. Yeah.
I love how you say once you get there, you can then include everything in that space, because when you get to that open, empty space, right, the part where the universe begins to speak requires context, doesn't it? So, for instance, in Christian circles, meditation in the Greek, when you research the history of the word, the etymology of the word, it really means to mutter, to say something over and over, right? Okay. So in that context, meditation is not about being empty and blank. It's really about focusing on something in particular. And in Christian circles, it would be scripture. And so you take that piece of scripture and then you mutter it and you go over it until you get some kind of revelation on that word, on that scripture. And so when you talked about, that empty space where you can then feel something in it, what I found out in my meditative journey is that meditation in and of itself is that tool that gets you to that clean place where you can then put in the right stuff, like the scripture, and then it then starts to make sense. But you do have to be able to get to that still place.
And that's just the journey in itself.
Exactly. But like he said, you're already there. Like when you really think about it, you can be still, you can be empty, you can be calm.
But isn't that like a mind thing now? That it's now your mind that you need to, the process of getting your mind to receive the truth that it's already there. That becomes like the journey of someone that is just starting on the meditation journey, so to speak.
Yeah.
So so the thing is, you recognize that that's your true nature, and then you then
start to become it.
I'm not sure if you then start to become it. It then starts to pervade your thoughts, your actions, what you say, all of that. So ultimately, your mind doesn't really need to come along for the journey. It can still be there thinking, I am a separate ego self.
Right.
But whereas you, as you really are, has recognized that you are pure awareness.
So what you're saying is that the mind is separate from me. My mind is separate. I am not my mind.
You're not your thoughts.
That's separate. That's different from I'm not my mind.
You're not your mind. You're not your body. You're not your thoughts.
So what am I?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a question for another session. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, because you think about it, right? What the only evidence we ever see of our minds are thoughts or images that appear in this space that feels inside, right? And through the early stages of meditating, you can realize that these thoughts and images just appear by themselves. There's no you thinking something before you think it. It just comes out from nothing.
Yeah.
So in reality, we know that we're not really our minds to begin with, and it then begs the question: what are we?
As opposed to who are we? Because people like to ask this who are we question, but we are more of a what than a who. But
because who is more like labels.
Right.
That's people put in labels.
We're more of a process.
Yes, labels. We are more of a process or a system.
We're a process,
I love that.
A constant changing flow of
energy,
thoughts, smells, energy, experiences, everything is just a flow. There's no point where it just stops and
it doesn't end.
But let me take you to that. Let me take you.
That actually, speaks into the Christian thought of eternity, because there's no beginning, there's no end. It's just you're just constantly flowing,
right?
And you're in the present.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
You were going to say.
Yeah. So, I wanted to go back to something that Fola mentioned, the different schools of thought about, can meditation help you progress, or is it non-progressive in itself? And there is a progressive aspect of it that I also wanted us to discuss, which is how meditation helps you cope with stress and anxiety, and in that way then helps you change and sort of become a better person. So, for instance, when you recognize and you're aware of the fact that you are not your thoughts, right? You can then separate your reactions. You can then put your reactions to any given event in context, in the proper context, as opposed to reacting to a trigger.
You can respond.
Yeah.
You can respond or choose not to respond and deal with the negative emotions on your own. So, for instance, you have situations where, we have people who always feel the need to call you out on something, or who always feel the need to point out something to you that you did. And you may have just been walking right past with no clue whatsoever of what you've done to offend the next person. And someone just takes offense at the fact that you wore a pink shirt today. But what has happened there is that your pink shirt has triggered something in me that I can't quite place. But with my lack of self-awareness, I then call you out for wearing that pink shirt. And then this whole altercation then takes place. And I say, oh, she knows I don't like pink. She wore pink today. She must hate me. Or maybe it's because of something I said yesterday. And then, all those negative things start to happen. But when meditation brings you to a place of self-awareness, you're able to say that I am not my thoughts, right? And all those things about pink and the shirt you wore, that's not really who you are, and I don't need to respond. So it helps me deal with the negative emotion without actually having to have an altercation with you or have a discussion that may spiral out of control. And that's the progressive aspect of meditation that I think really helps a lot of people become better in their day-to-day lives, in their relationships, with their kids, with their spouses, with their parents, with their co-workers, managing stress at work, especially with, all the politicking and whatnot. Meditation really is one of those things that helps you look at everything and release and deal with the negative emotions on your own, or rather with the help of the universe, as opposed to putting it on someone else or passing it around. I'd say. Yeah. And
I think it's at least for me, when I first started meditating, I recognized that so many things are impersonal. Like the thing with the pink shirt you pointed out, someone might take personal offense at that, but then meditation allows you, or rather it gives you choice to act a different way based on the fact that you can now recognize that that's not a personal attack on me.
Right.
It's just it's just energy that someone happens to be putting out there that I'm now taking in.
Exactly.
And you don't have to take in.
You don't have to. I like saying you don't have to react. You can respond skillfully.
I love that.
Most of our lives are spent just reacting to whatever thoughts comes up. We feel the emotions that come up, and then before we're saying something that we don't mean to say, or we're aggravating the situation. But with meditation, we can just unplug from that whole train and just respond from a place of peace, from a place of happiness, or a place of love and compassion. So, I think that sums it up.
Absolutely. One question I want to ask, Fola, is after all has been said, right, about the benefits of meditation and how it helps, it's helped you, it's helped me, it's helped all of us here. How would you advise our audience, to incorporate meditation into their lives for them to actually see these benefits? Is it something you do just when you're stressed, or is it something you do as a daily discipline?
So I think, that's a good question. I think it's useful to start off with a daily practice. So maybe in the morning when you wake up, first thing you do before you check your phone, or maybe in the evenings before you go to bed.
Right.
I think that really helps to just have that groundedness to your day, to have that routine. But then I think an often overlooked aspect of meditation is that it should really permeate your entire day.
Yes.
So it shouldn't just be something you do for 5 minutes at the start of it, and then throughout the rest of the day, you're mindless and you're getting angry, you're getting lost in thoughts, and you're being consumed by your experience. It should be something that can sort of punctuate your entire day.
Right.
So I think it's useful, at least for me early on, was to have like meditation spaces throughout my day. So like, let's say I'm going to university. My walk to a specific lecture hall, that helps me to trigger being mindful. Okay. Or maybe let's say my walk to a car, or let's say when I sit down to eat, or I'm talking to someone, having those triggers at the back of your mind that can just help you. So sort of events that happen that can just help you remember to be mindful.
Right.
Okay.
Can be really helpful. So I think it's 2 parts really: formal practice, morning or evening, and sort of triggers throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, so that what we're talking about is, apart from making it a daily discipline, which is so key because it sets you up for the day or it sets you up for the evening. And like I like to see it like an emotional wash, right? Like an emotional cleansing,
a filtering.
Exactly. So once you know you're able to do that, or like taking like an emotional bath in the morning, and you go out, the key is not to leave the essence of meditation in your bedroom or your meditative space, but to actually be mindful as you go along.
Throughout the day.
Throughout the day, as you drive to work, as you walk to lectures. Like I like to also practice meditative walking, and even when I lift weights, I actually meditate while I'm doing it. I do it to like meditative music, and I zone in and I'm present. I don't when I exercise, I don't exercise thinking about what my body is going to look like in 3 months or whatever. I like to be present when I'm working out, and that gives my workout a very different feel from when I'm struggling to be motivated by something in the future that may or may never happen. And so the mindfulness minute by minute is actually also key, so that you know we don't come back beating ourselves up. But beginners can actually start out by doing 3 to 5 minutes, or
even less. Like I started with
even less,
1 minute, with a 1 minute app,
right, or even less as a daily discipline. And the reason why it has to be daily discipline is because at the end of the day, success is really a sum of our habits, isn't it?
Yep.
And,
precisely.
And it's not something you want to be pulling out like a spare tire when you've had an accident, because then it might be a little too late. So, and in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Then means that you were never strong at all. So it's important that you build up that muscle through that daily discipline. So that makes sense.
I think a useful analogy, that I like is, you can imagine like a clenched fist, right? That's, let's say you've been clenching your fist for your whole life, that you sort of become oblivious to the energy required to clench your fist. Meditation is the process of unclenching your fist and sort of recreating more ease in that area.
Right.
You then realize that over time, to clench your fist again, which means to be lost in thoughts or to be distracted or to, be caught up by your experience, actually requires more effort than the ease of meditation.
Right. That's amazing. I love that.
So, yeah. So it's actually, ultimately, I think, it becomes so easeful that it's just effortless. It permeates your entire day, and the points when you're distracted are actually so
minimal.
So minimal, and
far between.
Exactly. That's the quite useful analogy that I use to just recognize what the goal in quotes is. Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes people go through stress, and then they say, "Oh, you know what? Stress is a part of life." Yeah, but the truth is, we don't have to live.
We don't have to stay stressed.
We don't have to stay stressed, and we don't have to live with the effects that stress has on us. And there are techniques that we can use to cope with stress. And
meditation.
And meditation is really one of the most useful techniques. I can testify personally, and even in my marriage, how meditation has really helped both my spouse and I to become better versions of our own selves. And it's a message that I'm glad that we've got sort of more converts to meditation in urban Lagos and urban Africa. And it was great. So we're going to go right into the
would you lead us in a meditation, in a guided meditation?
Yeah,
let's give it a try.
Sure.
Brilliant.
So I'll do 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
So if you're driving or you're operating any
heavy machinery,
just don't close your eyes.
Don't close your eyes.
Maybe anyone else, you're free to close your eyes.
Absolutely.
And sit in a comfortable posture
with your palms facing up, or not?
Yeah,
does that matter?
I mean, I tend to just put them against my knees, so like facing down.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's personal preference, I think.
Yeah.
Up your back upright, straight.
We're taking position here.
Straight but not too stiff. And just ease any tensions flowing through your body, maybe in the back of your neck, in your face, in your chest, and just commit to being here now for the duration of this meditation. So gently become aware of your breath coming in, going out, in, out, in, out. And if you're anything like me, you'll recognize that thoughts will start to appear from nothing. Images, plans, memories. Don't fight them. Just let them be and return to the breath. Coming in, going out. In, out. Just be. Thank you.
Oh, amazing.
That was it?
Yes, that was it. And I love where
I just got into
I can go on for a long day.
she was actually she dozed up for a minute. I could hear her snoring. Don't even listen to her. She started snoring right there. And I love the part where you say, if you're anything like me, you can see the thoughts and see the images, but don't fight them. Just let them be. And eventually, because when we fight them, right, it means we're engaging the thoughts, and then they stay longer, and it gets you even more distracted, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That was so refreshing.
Yeah, it was. Absolutely.
That's so refreshing.
Glad to hear.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. It was great having you on. I have learned so much. I'm going to go back to my meditation.
Likewise.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go back to meditating.
Same here. Same here.
Nice one. That was really good. So, guys, thank you for joining us today. Thank you I hope you also enjoyed that guided meditation session with us. If you want to learn more about meditation, and if you want to follow Fola Kumi, where can we find you, Fola Kumi? How can we get on that mailing list?
So it's being present. So being, BEING, present.substack.com. So that's SUBSTACK.com. stack.com.
Okay.
And you can also follow me on Instagram as well. That's just Fola Pinhero.
Fola
Amazing.
Pinhero on Instagram.
Yeah. So that's PINHEIRO.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you, guys. And you can follow us on True Living Africa on Instagram and Twitter. You can also listen to us on africabusinessradio.com, Africa Business Radio on Instagram and on Twitter. Follow us, and then we'll have details about how you can also reach out to Fola Kumi as well. So thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Have a good one. See you soon.
True living Africa. True living Africa.